went down another rabbit hole and I want to talk about it.
Feminists always want to mess up the natural order of the world.
Pearl Davis, better known as just Pearly Things, has been in the spotlight a lot over the past year. She has grabbed the public's attention through her anti-feminist views and has often been referred to as the female Andrew Tate.
Hi. Hello. It's Kendall here. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? I'm a masochist, a bit of a sadist, and when you combine those things, you get videos like this. Hannah Pearl Davis. She has vexed the internet for several years at this point, but she has particularly gotten my hyperfixation in the last few months. And much like other things that I go down the rabbit hole, I feel as though I have to make a video on it. Otherwise, I'm gonna just keep annoying people in my real life about it. And at some point, they just tired of me bringing shit up, I'd imagine. But she's someone who I find incredibly fascinating in a morbid, very, very sad and perplexing way.
I think the men should keep demanding thinner and thinner and hotter and hotter. Why not?
Oh, how many bodies does it take for a girl to become a hoe?
So many times women say, let me break these barriers and let me come into these industries, but we're not talented or strong enough to actually break those barriers.
Because why? Why are you like this? For those of you that have somehow avoided this redheaded scoundrel over the last few years, God bless you. Lucky you are indeed, because I was not so lucky. And over the years, I find that she somehow comes up in content or other things that I'm watching anyway, and they're in some way or another focusing on her. And before you know it, I found myself hyperfixated, going down the rabbit hole. And again, that's why we're here today, because I want to talk about this cretin. Because again, what else am I supposed to do with this information other than make a video about it? Because otherwise I just keep it inside, or again, bothering people around me. So if you've seen another video I did about a rabbit hole I went down, which was the NoFap rabbit hole, I kind of touched on how I found that bled into a lot of like Manosphere bullshit. And the Manosphere, again, is something that I find very morbidly fascinating. It really does tell us a lot about the state of the kind of panic a lot of men are having around their identity, if not to subject women. It also fascinates me how it appeals to men, considering I see these men, you know, your Andrew Tates, your Kevin Samuels, rest in piss. These men who just spread misogyny, violent misogyny, and bad advice, honestly, to a lot of men. I always question how they got there because they are so blaringly insecure to me. It's fascinating to me. But it does make more sense to me considering they're men talking to other men, or usually boys who are in that kind of awkward stage, trying to figure themselves out, trying to figure out how they relate to women and girls around them, or just dating in general, their own sexuality, their own view of the world, and they are looking for guidance, and they end up on that pipeline that leads to chaos. So it makes sense, but it's still like, it's so blaringly obvious that these guys don't know what they're talking about, like have never met a woman, have never talked to women or met women. But again, it's men talking to men, so that makes sense to me. But Pearl is perhaps one of the most prolific and visual faces, female faces, of the Manosphere grift.
Well, see, my thing with women voting is I just don't believe that you should get the freedom to vote without the responsibility that comes with it. I think you should be a net taxpayer. I think you should be doing the dangerous, hard jobs. Sex workers are not typically responsible with the money they earn. It does not matter how much money she gets. Typically, these women blow it and have no plan for after their sexuality disappears. And I had this thought with born-again virgins. I kind of make fun of them a little bit, where women basically do they sleep with a guy and then come out and say, oh, now you are waiting for marriage. Real wife does not get divorced. She doesn't believe in it. And she will make the relationship work at all costs, even at the expense of herself.
Outside of it just being very damaging to society and, you know, women and all that stuff. If you listen to that, me said, it's just a really bad idea. To be a woman in the Manosphere, like, your entire viewership is going to be men who have rallied together around their hatred of women. And you're tokenizing yourself as one of the women that get it. One of the good ones, which is never a good sign to be a token of any kind. But especially on something that is already quite limiting, and that Pearl seems to have made active strides to limit more for herself specifically. And that's fascinating to me.
Problem is at 35, you've lost all the things that men value. That's the problem, because men value femininity, fertility, and they value youth. So you can't say you're youthful when you're almost halfway through your life. Like, you can't say you're fertile when you're about to have geriatric pregnancy. So it's like, and you look worse than you did at 25, right? So the way you're thinking is like a woman.
A woman's 35 and unmarried, it's likely that she will never get married.
Ooh. Oh. She ain't got much. She's 27? I just realized that. She's 27? Yeah. She's so young for her age.
To look over 35 already.
Pearl made a quick name for herself very quickly. You've probably seen like some clip of her saying something absolutely asinine and makes no sense. And for some reason, her editors pause it as if she really dropped the mic when she just sounds absolutely stupid.
If my son came home from school one day and said to me, look, Mum, I'll be honest with you, I think I'm gay, I would take it on and I'd be open.
What if your son came home and said, I think I'm black?
But she's very loud, speaks as if she knows what she's talking about, very ostentatious and brazen.
I haven't seen you talk to an actual scholar once. You just talk to kind of random women.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that's fair to say. Right.
Mm-hmm.
While also shooting herself in the foot, actively giving herself a ticking time bomb on her own grift, which again, fascinating to me. And this was a conclusion I reached about a year ago. I was like, that seems like a bad idea. Again, outside of the obvious harm caused by all the rampant misogyny and being co-signed by a woman, it just seems like a bad way to do business on her part. And I was just kind of waiting for it to all fall apart and preparing myself for the blissful Schadenfreude when it happens. I feel like Schadenfreude is going to be the word of the day because this shit is funny to me and that's fine. So sit back, relax, get a drink. I made a green apple mule. And enjoy as much as you can me rambling about this. This whole shenanigans with this woman that makes my ass itch. I first became aware of Pearl probably around the time most people became aware of Pearl because she kind of made her name known through honestly holding the coattails of Andrew Tate as his shit became a part of the mass consciousness. And so at the time she was being touted, if you will, as the female Andrew Tate, a beacon of misogyny with a woman's face on it. What more can we need? What more can we ask for? And around this time, she was popping up on my Twitter in particular with her interesting takes. And at the time, people were really roasting her, thankfully, on my timeline, because I follow, generally speaking, people who would be like, this sucks. And I remembered her because someone said something very funny, and I cannot see her and not think of this. And I considered whether or not I wanted to bring this up because it is an insult of her looks. But I feel like A, she spends all her time talking about women on the most debasing ways possible. And B, it's funny as hell. They said she looked like a founding father. And I should and because of that, I have never been able to see her in a way other than that. I've also thought about how she looks like that in between. Have you guys ever seen the picture of Marjorie Taylor Greene and a Neanderthal? She always kind of looked like the in-between for me. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. But that's not important. It's not important at all, but it is something of note considering a lot of the ways in which Pearl goes about her particular brand of misogyny is basically talking down to other women because they are ugly, they are fat, they are whores, they are not traditional pure women, they are modern women. And she talks about all the issues, quote unquote, with women having rights in any way. And some of them are so asinine that even men on the right kind of look at her sideways sometimes too, which is a feat, honey. I also wonder if it's because she's a woman that they actually listen. It's kind of ironic, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's like because she's a woman, they actually listen to what she says to debunk it, if that makes sense. Like if a man was saying the same asinine shit, they'd be like, oh, whatever. But like because she's a woman, they're like actively trying to mansplain why she's stupid, and they're right because she is dumb. But neither here nor there. But that brings me to the fact that though she is this kind of figurehead of sorts of women in the manosphere who are swiftly moving over to that alt-right pipeline, as we will learn, Pearl is not just disliked by people like me who think she's a harmful misogynist and just has really shitty takes on everything. She's also disliked by men in the manosphere, and not just because she's a woman, but because she's a no, I'm joking. Women are stupid and I don't respect them. That's right. I just have sex with them. Show me your genitals. Sorry, that's the second time I've brought up showing your genitals in a video in like the last 2 months. I'm so sorry. Anyway, no, they don't like her because she doesn't seem particularly sincere in her grift. She's not convincing in her grift. So as I kind of like learn more about each side's complaints, I fell more and more down the rabbit hole. Now, immediately upon witnessing Pearl, listening to her talk specifically about relationships, most of her work, especially early on, was her opinions on women and relationships. And she had this very like stark and confusing rigidity against women, considering she is one, and that would therefore affect her as well. But to me, it came off self-hating, self-loathing.
From a young age, I haven't thought highly of myself. I never thought that I deserved a lot, to be honest. I never thought of myself as a queen. And I never thought of myself super highly. I'm gonna just be honest here.
And of course, instead of going to get any meaningful psychiatric help or, I don't know, learn to self-love, maybe journal a little bit, she turned that into a widespread grift that we were all kind of forced to deal with because she would not shut the fuck up. And the way algorithms work these days, engagement is engagement. She'll pop up regardless. Tragic, honestly. Instead of looking for help with her issues with self-worth or whatever, Pearl became one of the loudest pygmies to ever grift. Tragic. So who is Just Pearly Things? If we're gonna say very, very succinctly, by the way, I'll herefore refer to her as Pearl instead of Hannah Pearl Davis or whatever, because she does go by Pearl. She is a 27-year-old American YouTuber whose entire ideology seems to be centered on anti-feminism. She believes pretty succinctly that all the problems that exist in the world can be traced back to women and their pesky desire for human rights. And over time, again, she's been moving further and further away from the general like misogyny grift to the far right extremist grift.
Having Nick Fuentes, who's a white supremacist,
anti-Semite,
on her platform. And basically, when she invited him on the platform for an interview, she didn't push back against any of the stuff that she said, basically was co-signing him.
Which, again, does not surprise me, considering your entire viewership is based on a communal hatred of women that tends to also go along with other right-wing ideologies. So, shocker there. A quick running list of things that Pearl believes, particularly in regards to women. According to Pearl, women should not be feminists.
I think that feminism overall was a bad thing. I think women are happier when we have, you know, a family and kids over a career in the long run.
Shouldn't be able to vote because they are too emotional, are unable to do anything without the guidance and authority of men.
Let's just be honest. We're basically like big kids, right? That can just be propagated and like you can push us to do things.
Are all whores, but just to varying degrees.
Hierarchy of whoredom. All right, so at the bottom we have hookers. We have porn stars. OnlyFans. Ladies, you're not at the bottom, but you're not far from it. Now, a stripper can go on to live a normal life because there's no maybe she didn't sell sex for money. I mean, we all know what goes on in the strip clubs. You sleep with too many people, you are barely better than a stripper. Now, remember, if you have both, you're lower. But if you just have a kid and not the body count, you're slightly above the whore. Or mid body count. Low body count.
Even virgins. They're just the least whores of us all.
And at the top, virgins. This is the hierarchy of whoredom from least slutty.
Could go extinct and the world would pretty much be unchanged.
If women's jobs disappeared tomorrow, society would probably be fine. But if men's jobs disappeared tomorrow, it would be rough out there.
Shouldn't be allowed to be on birth control.
If this was Pearl's world, I'd get rid of birth control. I'd ban it, but that'll never happen.
Shouldn't be fat. Shouldn't be unmarried after their early 20s. Should have children as soon as possible. Shouldn't be able to divorce their husbands.
I think we should ban divorce too. Yeah, I think that should be banned. Yes.
Okay, well, that's a little bit silly. You have to acknowledge that, right?
No.
Shouldn't earn more money than their husbands. That women have nothing of value, especially to men after their peak of 23, are not equal to men, and it's rude to suggest they are. Ruin every industry they join, shouldn't be in the police force, should expect their partners to cheat if they are with, quote, valuable or high value men.
You get a high value man. If you choose to marry, if I chose to go down the path of high value man, then that would also be signing up for high value problems. So if I chose to go down that path, I would know that it's a possibility. And I don't think I would want to ruin an entire family over that. So would I give him permission? No. But if it happened, am I going to break up my whole home?
If a woman cheats, she's trying to leave you. If a man cheats,
Yes.
he's just like, it's like a handshake.
And should have to take a paternity test after giving birth.
There should be mandatory DNA testing at birth.
No.
I don't know why you, okay.
Because it's calling my wife a whore to do that. First of all, mandatory, good grief. But the premise of it is that my wife is sleeping around.
These are just some, not all, of the incredibly stupid things that Pearl has said, but I'm happy you already know what we're getting into based off of that. So she comes from a very wealthy family, particularly one that lives in a mansion, one of those hideous McMansions in the suburbs of Chicago, with a mother and a father who are both very successful software engineers making like millions of dollars off of a company that they made and then selling it. And now particularly the mother works in another organization that she created that is ironically about helping women in business.
Their website also mentions that Be Exponential was built by women for women, which is an interesting footnote considering the kinds of things Pearl has been known to advocate for as of recent.
Notably, Pearl, tends to actively ignore or diminish or outright just be rude to her mom in regards to her mother's accomplishments. I wonder, not that it's my place, but I do have a sneaking suspicion that maybe some of the foundation for Pearl's misogyny is how she feels about her mother in particular, simply because they had a lot of kids and Pearl behaves as if she didn't get the focus that she wanted in the family or even at school or whatever, and she kind of blames her mom perhaps for that. I don't know. I guess that's not my place to speculate, but as a nosy bitch, I do wonder, like, what is your relationship with your mom? Especially because in a way, she is damaging her mother's reputation in her own business by being such a loud and proud misogynist. Or maybe her mom is like, it, do whatever you got to do to make money. Would also not surprise me. I don't know. But anyway, and though now we know Pearl is kind of the face of internet misogyny, her early beginnings on the internet were pretty benign, though strange, considering her first taste of internet fame was based off of a TikTok that she posted about her dad buying a water slide, like one that's in a water park, to go in their backyard. And she just basically told the story of why the city didn't want them to put it up. I don't have anything to say about that other than rich people be doing shit. And honestly, if I had more money than God, I would be doing dumb shit like this as well. So it's I don't know. But later she got a little bit more traction because she was making content, particularly in relation to relationships. She had a series on her channel where she would make a questionnaire for people to give to their exes to ask why they broke up. And then any juicy or interesting ones she would read on her TikTok. And notably, she was not in a relationship or one serious enough that she felt that she could give the questionnaire to anybody that she had been talking to at the time. And I bring this part up in particular because as far as I know, I could be wrong, but this was like 3-4 years ago, and till this day, Pearl has yet to be in a serious relationship. She had a short-lived relationship with a TikToker that I'll bring up later, but for the most part, as far as we know, she's never been in a serious relationship, which is all the more hilarious considering, again, her entire come up, quote unquote, was her giving horrible, terrible advice for relationships, saying what she would want from relationships that are very specific and very not ideal for healthy, happy relationships. But she, again, with the gusto and the assuredness of someone who's never actually lived life at all, she very foolishly touted her advice and her thoughts as if she had any experience in a relationship to prove that she actually wanted these very traditional emotional and kind of reductive things that she is saying everyone else should want in a relationship. And this got me thinking about something I'd always noticed about pick-me's. And when I'm referring to pick-me's, I'm not just saying women who, it's not just women who seem to wrap their entire existence around the approval of men, which is already bad enough, but there's also this other side of the coin in which they talk down to other women to tout themselves up as someone who's worthy of being picked. But I, up until very recently, was always single. But kind of the opposite reason of pick-me's, well, that'd be insincere to suggest that misogyny hadn't in some way or another impacted my dating practices. But I had definitely gotten to the part where I was kind of just like, I'm unimpressed with the men that I'm meeting, like how they communicate and connect and build, you know, intimacy and build relationships, whatever. So I was, again, until very recently single. But I always thought like, damn, pick-me's put a lot of work in to be in the exact same space as I this like falling on the sword. These bitches can't do nothing. They can't do nothing the way I can do it, baby. I cook, I clean, I suck your through a straw. And I'm just like, bitch, it's just a lot of work. Like screaming to the rooftop about every way you will debase yourself is a heavy price to pay to be just as single as a bitch that don't leave the house. I just feel, I don't know. But anyway, but Pearl definitely falls into that category of like women who are studying men, quote unquote. And when I say men, I mean man TM. What men like, what men want from a woman, and is like trying to research and mold herself into that person. And because maybe she has spent a lot of time doing that, she touts herself as kind of an arbiter of what the ideal relationship is and what the ideal woman is, even though again, she's never been in a serious relationship. And it's not like she's saying things that would make sense. You know, like I would, even though I've never been in a relationship, I'd like to be with someone who's kind and considerate, who sees me as a human, who wants to spend time with me, wants to do things with me. Not those like things that make sense. She has this very rigid understanding and viewpoint and definition of valuable men and valuable women. And she uses these as kind of not an instruction manual, because as we'll come to talk about, she does not do any of these things, but she uses that as a way to debase women around her and tout herself as better, even though she doesn't actually hold any of the attributes that she's saying are ideal. If that makes sense? Like, sure, I'm not the ideal, but I'm not these hoes. That's kind of the vibe about a lot of her conversation around women in particular. What she seems to suggest is that a valuable man wants someone beautiful. I've said my piece on that. Subservient, docile, virgin. Lets the man be the man of the household. And again, she is none of these things. She won't shut the f up. She's not a virgin at all. Like me. No, I'm just...
Okay, how many people have you slept with? You ask everybody that. And you don't say your own number?
No, I don't even ask body count.
It's a single digit?
No, I say it is a single digit.
Okay.
But
she's always talking about how women should basically be virgins when they get married.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be too crude or anything, but do you take her virginity?
Nah, listen.
Okay.
I ain't take that girl virginity. Somebody way before me did.
Again, I've said what I said about her face, and I'm not going to go into that more because it's rude. But my thing is, if Pearl believes that these are the markers of a valuable woman, it explains how she became such a self-hating head, because again, she has none of those qualities. Maybe she wants to feel like she's closer to the ideal, again, comparatively to other women who believe that they have autonomy and free will to do with their body, mind, whatever, their lives. And it may also explain, again, how she ended up in the Manosphere, specifically the Black Manosphere. So Pearl wasn't always like this, as I kind of alluded to before. She had a normal life. She would talk about her family, do like a chicken coop tour and like little innocuous things. She has a bunch of brothers and sisters, and they, by and large, seem like normal people. But she seems to have found her way into the Manosphere via Black Manosphere figures. Kevin Samuels. Some dude named Alpha Male Strategies. I refuse to click on his videos, but, you know, just looking at the thumbnails, looking at the titles, Pearl likes them. That's 3 strikes, you're out. It's fine. They're not gonna get a dime out of me. Timon and Pumbaa, fresh and fit. And, you know, and other such like Black kind of dating coaches. if you will, or, you know, tout themselves in some way or another as, like, again, people that can speak on relationships, how to speak down to women, specifically black women. And Pearl would find solace of some sort within the black manosphere, particularly when talking about or learning about what men want in relationships, quote unquote. This is theory. Again, I can't say one way or another if this is true. Well, there is history of Pearl dating black men or trying to get things started with black men. And again, she's never been in a serious relationship, so that leads me to believe that those did not work out. And these men seem to have this kind of air of kind of instructive thing while completely debasing women and insulting women, particularly black women, but in a way give instructions to men and women on how to be valuable as a woman, how to get a valuable man, and perhaps that led her down the pipeline of the black manosphere. Side note, I had never heard of Kevin Samuels before he died. And so when there was just this crazy amount of unbridled collective happiness on my timeline, glee, schadenfreude on my timeline when he died, truly glorious. Glorious. He was just a terrible, awful man who died in the bed of a woman that he would have said was, you know, unfitting, which is just, again, ironic. I hope he's burning in hell, tap dancing, if you will. But yes, I think that there's this element of Pearl venturing into these spaces to find instruction or to find clarity on why perhaps her dating life wasn't working out. And kind of the way that she talks about the manosphere, especially in the early stages, is that she talks about it as if she were trying to research her buyer, quote unquote. And she's even used those words before in conversation around relationships.
When you're trying to sell a car, if you're trying to get married, right? And please, I'm not saying that women are cars, it's just an analogy. But if you're trying to sell a car, you have to study the buyer and figure out what the buyers want.
Thinking about her buyer and thinking about what men want seems to be what permeates every terrible take she has. So it isn't an overestimation to say that Pearl got her footing, not specifically just from the manosphere, but the black manosphere specifically, but she would end up working with black men and women, but particularly black men in the early parts of her career when she would essentially do podcasts talking about relationships, talking down to women with high body count, and particularly hyperfixation on that one. And again, the men in the black manosphere were cool with it until the lions started eating their faces. Take, for instance, a former supporter of hers and a co-host for her in the infancy of her channel, Sarah Garvey. Another situation where I didn't want to click on anybody's channel because you're not getting a penny out of me, but a quick perusing shows what this man's general philosophy and ideology is. And again, co-signing Pearl in the early parts of her career also tells me a lot. But on his own channel right now, it says, quote, "In a world full of feelings, misinformation, snowflakery, and lies, I dedicate my time to bringing the facts. They say I'm controversial. The facts normally are when you've been fed the lie for so long. Freedom of speech advocate, feather ruffler, and truth speaker. Don't watch my content if you're not used to hearing opposing viewpoints from the status quo." But they had the grand idea of working together because at the time, Sarah Garvey had a bigger following than Pearl, according to him, and he was able to essentially build up her name into the name that she is today based off of his following at first and then catapulting off of that. And I think it's safe to say, you know, me and this dude, for reasons far beyond his initial warm countenances towards Pearl, would not get along. But I do find it interesting that, again, this seems to be a blind spot, particularly for black manosphere influencers, specifically this Hotepian brother here. They only recognize the issues of their points when it burns them.
She's made her entire career on clowning black women. Yeah. It's like, oh, now that she said something about black people as a whole, y'all got an issue.
And they don't seem to understand that misogyny is bedfellows with white supremacy, and misogyny is bedfellows with racism. They often are a package deal. To kind of present itself when Sarah Garvey and other black show ponies that Pearl had on her show with her would eventually criticize publicly her colonial mindset, unfair wages, predatory contracts, and racism and apologetics towards an open and loud
70% goes to me and 30% goes to you. And she said no. 70% goes to me, Pearl, and 30% goes to me, Sarah Garvey.
You've ate off just pearly things by tagging us. I got bare smoke for you lot, bro. Both of you lot. I got smoke for Abba and Preach, bro.
You ain't saying shit now, right?
I'm pretty sure this dude's unemployed now.
You ain't saying shit now.
They fired his ass.
When you come for pearly thing, well, you now.
Oh no, you didn't see that coming? I did. Oh no. So when she started going down the pipeline that I knew she was going to go down, it's pretty obvious once you start to notice kind of trends and whatnot. Again, I find it hard to find any feeling other than schadenfreude. That's the word of the day. Again, both towards the black men who, again, were fine with touting her horrible, heinous takes towards women, particularly black women, when they realized that cozying up to a good white woman who agrees with their harmful takes also means that she agrees with their own internalized black self-hatred. You know, she can hate you just as much as you hate yourself. Rest assured, Pearl is no great proponent to black people of any gender, despite working with a bunch of them, dating black men. And it's funny when Sarah Garvey's looking around surprised Pikachu when that is the case, when he reaches this inevitable fact. But okay, off the back of Sarah Garvey and other black people, Pearl was able to hoist herself up to supreme token status. And Pearl's tokenism is incredibly fascinating to me. Again, not only is it against her own self-interest to be misogynistic as a woman, but also in the process of doing that, she makes such a finite timeline for how long she can talk about this shit without people, specifically her women-hating audience, starts to look at her sideways like, well, bitch. Because recall, according to Pearl, women should be virgins and then married in their early 20s, pop out kids as quickly as possible, and should have all the attributes that men, according to some random statistics she read, should appeal to men. They should not be a day over 23. I don't know, I guess you just Midsommar. It's like that you just jump off a bridge. And that is the goal, and the highest esteem that you can hold a woman in is to be married very young, have kids very young, and shut up when your husband starts cheating on you when he's 30. But Pearl is a unmarried, non-virgin at the ripe age of 27. That's a hard 27. Use sunscreen, baby. Sorry. So it would seem that her years for youth and fertility, she's already peaked 4 years ago, again, according to her. So that time she has to really spew this rhetoric seems to be running ever closer to the end. And so the irony of her trying to sell herself, again, she can't be the ideal because she doesn't possess any of those things. She's not a virgin. She's not, pretty. Sorry. She's not quiet and docile. She's not married. She has no kids. While also touting that those are the ideal, more and more she's becoming undesirable in every corner of the internet. And that's even before we get into the Nazi shit.
Not only did Pearl platform Nick Fuentes, but she started agreeing with some of his takes.
Which, you know, I agree with him on. Like, I admire Stalin. I admire Hitler.
I think I got red-pilled a little bit more this interview.
Homophobic shit, anti-Semitism shit.
This week, she's facing a major backlash for posting a song titled "Why Can't We Talk About the Jews?" before later deleting it.
Why can't we talk about them without getting kicked off of YouTube? Now, I'm not saying was a good guy, but I kinda wanna know why.
The slavery denial?
You know what this reminds me of?
What?
The way they put American slavery as above all different types of slavery, almost. But that's what they do, is they embellish. And I'm not trying to say it wasn't horrible. It was.
Right.
But they want to make it, like, more horrible.
We're purely talking about her weird hangups about women and how they should mold their entire sense of self around what men want. Again, men, I have to say that with air quotes because it's always this, like, incredibly synthesized non-person they're referring to when they say men and women. Like, who is this guy that's saying, like, nope, I like my woman to be virgins and blah, blah, blah. Even if a lot of men in either consciously or subconsciously feel like they want a woman who's closer to virginal than experience for some reason because of misogyny and honestly a lot of marital practices being based in pedophilia, but we won't go there today. Every day that passes, Pearl is farther and farther away from that ideal. So who the are you to say this shit? And this to me really explains why everyone hates Pearl. Everybody hates Pearl. Like inside and outside of the Manosphere. Because sure, again, she is unmarried and doesn't have kids, isn't a virgin, blah, blah, blah. You know, she doesn't have any of those things. But it also doesn't help that she is also unlikable. And a 5. According to her own metric. She said that.
I give myself like a 5.
A 5? Yeah, that's fair, I think. I mean, based on your metric, I'm not saying one way or the other.
Do you know why Pearl is available? She's masculine as hell. Men like feminine women. Oh, no. Feminine women do not go online and sit on podcasts and argue with men all day long. That is not what men want.
Is this satire? Is he just like kind of throwing back what she does? He's just kind of repeating like the same energy.
Back to Pearl. She definitely understands what men want, but she's just masculine as hell.
Again, kind of like the guy, Sarah Garvey, who created an entire pedestal to put Pearl on for her to spew her rhetoric, only for it to shoot him in the foot. So too is Pearl on her soapbox talking about how terrible women are and amassing a viewership of men who hate women, seemingly forgetting that Pearl art woman, thou art woman, and even if they agree with the sweeping generalizations and horrible, like, logic that she has around, like, no basis for any thought she has, she just says, that doesn't mean that these men like Pearl, one, because you're appealing to very superficial men at that case who think of women as this very like two-dimensional thing, and she does not possess any of the things to incense that type of guy anyway. She can't rapture them with her beauty or her sparkling personality or angelic voice or any of the superficial things that seem to give at least right-wing women a little bit of leg room in that space, even though short-lived, baby, you, again, barking up the wrong tree. But it doesn't help that in every corner of the internet, it seems it's very customary to question her sincerity in regards to her beliefs at this point. Because one of the crux, in my opinion, of a right-wing grift is to accept no responsibility, ever. No accountability, you don't apologize, you do not back down, you don't waver. You don't waver in the face of backlash, criticism, especially when your entire presence online is you fighting the status quo and not recognizing that the status quo is already misogyny, but I digress. But if you question Pearl, critique Pearl, scrutinize any part of her rhetoric or her thinking to her face, she clams up, she retreats, she makes apology videos, she deletes videos, backtracks, apologizes, apologizes back. Weak. How you gonna be a right-wing grifter and be scared, bitch? That's not me saying be a more unapologetic right-wing grifter, but what I'm saying is there is something telling there about Pearl because, you know, Kevin Samuels, he did it for the love of hating black women. He did it for the love of the game. I don't know if Pearl loves the game of selling misogyny as much as she loves the concept of getting the approval of a lot of men who think she's so smart for her opinions. She doesn't seem to be a particularly skilled grifter because she seems insincere at this point. I don't know if it's because of all the friends in real life she's lost, the fact that how many times can you say misogynistic shit? There's only so many words to say the same shit, and I think that's partially why she's going even further into the extremism pipeline at this point. Like when I think of Pearl in conversation of like other right-wing grifters, because that's where she is now officially, like full alt-right grifter territory, she just seems quite dispassionate about it all. This is not a compliment to Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson or any of the other ones, but like if they believe it or not, at least they seem like they do. Like they try, they're very enthusiastic about their horrible, horrible takes, you know? And they don't often waver. They're gonna stand by their awful takes. Ben Shapiro ain't apologized that he don't know how a coochie work yet. But they don't back down from the daily decision they've made to be a terrible person. Because being a far-right grifter is being a terrible person. You have to commit to the lifestyle, Pearl. And you again, it seems as though she only recently ended up in this sphere, at least to this depth. She isn't a lifelong Manosphere pundit, having only discovered it in its peak with like Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate and whatnot. And especially with her losing real things in real life, like friends, family, respect, I'm sure, for some people that are in her close life. I wonder if she has any attachment to the things she says outside of her own self-hatred and at this point, the love of money, which for many can be enough. But it would seem that over time, Pearl is becoming more and more convictionless. She's becoming more and more flaccid in how she goes about her rhetoric. Maybe because the more scrutiny she gets, the more people realize that she's a f***ing idiot. My theory is that Pearl didn't want to be a right-wing grifter, but found, as many grifters do, an opportunity to capitalize on it in the short term without any lasting plans on what to do when she was 30 and unmarried, or 30 without kids, or, you know, with no like long-term goals. But she just went full speed ahead with her own self-loathing as the thing that drove her forward. Again, according to her former friend and like short-term ex, she wasn't like this 3 years ago. Again, she's theorized to have a relationship with that short-term ex, relationship, situationship, whatever. And it's said around the space that breakup with that TikTok star was her villain origin story, because he broke up with her because her body count was too high. That's alleged. I never saw the video of her saying that, but it's been said that she went on a live stream and said that. So perhaps spearheaded by some self-loathing, after a bad breakup, she turned to the Manosphere to figure out what's wrong with her. Why has a relationship eluded her? When I thought about it this way, I sympathized with her. Again, much like I talked about in the NoFap video, no one is saying it's easy to date. No one is saying that you won't question yourself, that sometimes you'll feel unseen and undervalued, frustrated, unloved. It can really shake you and maybe make you question yourself a little bit. But my compassion ends at, okay, I'm gonna be a misogynistic right-wing grifter instead of going to therapy. And she has no excuse. Okay, other people don't have the money. Your family are multimillionaires. Oh my God. You should be embarrassed. Your parents should be embarrassed. But now she's starting to get to the place where her poorly regurgitated far-right fringe talking points aren't landing because A, you have no conviction, and B, you are a woman. Hello? Dumb bitch. Oh my God. The moment you show weakness, according to them, you are a lightning rod for all of that misogyny that you've been fostering in your audience. And again, I find it funny. I'm sorry. Make me a bad person. Call me a bad person. I don't give a Now, that isn't to say that Pearl hasn't made a killing in her grift. Obviously, we're making this video about her. That's how we know her at all, because it had some traction. But part of the reason I'm so morbidly fascinated by Pearl is because I, again, have been waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I had speculations about what that would be, what that would look like. You know, I guessed maybe she would actually enter into a horrible but long-term relationship, maybe get married to an abusive husband, and suddenly all that talk about divorcing should never happen is suddenly out of the window all of a sudden. Maybe she has a kid and then gets divorced and now she's a single mother, like all those single mothers that she's always talking about. Or egad, turn 30. Any of these are possible pathways where she could, again, lead to falling flat on her face. But it would seem that the chickens have finally come to roost quicker than I expected. Honestly, again, I expected her to need a little bit more time for that, but I think we're seeing the beginnings of the fall of Pearl, and I'm very excited about it. This kind of started off a few months ago when she was demonetized on YouTube and banned on Instagram for making a video where she interviewed people on the street. She ended up interviewing some 15-year-olds.
One was yelling that just Pearly Things stopped her 50-year-old sister in the street and her school friends to ask them invasive questions about bedroom fun on her YouTube channel. She made several cuts of the video and has subjected them to abuse from the Red Pill community. So she was interviewing some teenagers. So some 14 and 15-year-olds.
So, because she's now lost a big place of her, where her money comes from, she is now floundering to get people to subscribe to her network, which is a subscription service that she does where you can pay $10 a month or $80 a year to listen to more Pearl and pay her for it. 500 American dollars for advice from Pearl? The fuck? Girl, go straight to hell. Again, considering she's not a particularly likable figure for any direction at this point, even if someone agreed with her, I highly doubt they're gonna spend money to listen to her say it again. or listen to any of the other like people that she's brought on to her network, as she so calls it. It's just hearing, you know, different people say things that Pearl already said. So as of today, her viewership has taken a mighty nosedive, and it's very, very funny. And I think that's a good sign. I hope that means that a lot of the particularly young boys who were watching a lot of red pill stuff, a lot of this manosphere, angry, I can't get a girl rhetoric, are getting older and recognizing how that's a swift path down to loserdom. And I hope this is a sign that maybe something can change for the better in that regard. Or if anything, that perhaps having a platform based off of this type of harmful misogyny is less lucrative and therefore less likely something that people would want to do. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna end this video because my battery's about to die, but I would like to end it by saying, F Pearl. I hope everything that you built continues to flounder because it was built off of the hatred of black women, the hatred of women in general, and then just your own self-hatred. Again, could have went to therapy, could have talked about it, could have figured that out. And maybe even you went to therapy, but you could have kept going or got a new therapist. But instead, what did you do? You became a right-wing grifter. Hurt people. Sad. It's embarrassing. But anyway, that's all for today, folks. So I can unleash this onto the world and never think about her again. That'd be great. If you like this video, feel free to like this video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram and Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. And I will see you guys next time.